I've married at least 10 different women. They're all the same name, Charmaine.
You have to prepare to make change. You would never go to war without a gun and making sure you have the right ammo and making sure you have certain things that you're equipped with. So why would you not prepare for something like this? This is going to be probably one of the biggest things that any couple would ever have to go through in their relationship if they have to stop a divorce from happening.
You know, the reality is in our world, divorce is a high percentage, it's a high failure rate. And so many of us really want to keep our marriages, but yet and still one spouse may not want to keep the marriage. So what do you do? Today, we want to deal with how do we stop our spouse from divorcing us?
We should definitely go into some steps that people could take in order to stop a divorce. So number one, stopping your spouse from divorcing you is really hard. One psychologist I was reading who does a lot of marriage counseling, he was saying that there's a particular couple that he was counseling and the husband was wanting the counseling. He was very agreeable to the counseling, but the spouse, his wife, was very suspect. She didn't think it was going to help any. So she sat back, she did everything that the psychologist said, and they did this counseling for over several months. They would counsel, go back home. She saw no change. He wanted to say everything right. He wanted to do everything right at the meetings, but he did not want to change when they got home. He was the same person when they got home. And eventually she said, I'm done. I tap out. This is it. So she filed for divorce. The same psychologist was their mediator because they felt comfortable with him. So he was mediating the divorce for about 6 months. At one particular meeting, the husband decided, I want to change. I'm done fooling around. I want to change. But at that point, the wife was just through with the marriage. He had waited so late to want to change. And it's so important that if we're going to stop our spouse from wanting to divorce us, that we're willing to make a change, that we're willing to say, you know what? I acknowledge some things that I could be doing better in my marriage. And I actually show my spouse that I'm willing to make the change. And I think a lot of times in marriage, we let pride get in the way of actually making the changes we need to make because we don't feel like it's us that is the problem, quote unquote, that it's our spouse that is the problem. And it's so easy to point the finger and see all the things that your spouse is not doing versus seeing some things that you can do better. What do you think about that?
You know, 100%. You know, let me tell y'all something. Change begins with you. Listen, if you want something different, you have to do something different.
Right.
If we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always gotten. I realize in every relationship, there's two people. So oftentimes it's two problems. I know one person may be a bigger issue, but ultimately both have a contributing problem that they have to deal with. And the sad part is we often wait to the very end before we decide that we are willing to make the change. The reality of it all is we're always changing. We're constantly changing. I know right now I've married at least 10 different women. What do you say, Jomo? I've married at least 10 different women. Now, they're all the same name, Charmaine. See, I married the 20-year-old Charmaine, the 21-year-old Charmaine, the 23-year-old Charmaine, the first baby Charmaine, the second baby Charmaine, the third baby Charmaine. So my point is, as we go through our relationships and go through the challenges, we are constantly dealing with a different spouse based on where they are. A pregnant wife is different than a non-pregnant wife. And so as we go through these seasons of marriage, we have to understand that change is inevitable and we have to embrace the change. But like you said, oftentimes we wait too late to say, listen, I'm willing to make the change. And so for us, and many times our relationship, we had to have sit downs and talk about what's wrong and what we're willing to do to make the changes.
That's good. I totally agree with what you just said. I think we should definitely go into some steps
Okay.
that people could take in order to stop a divorce if they feel like they're going down that road. So, number one, prepare for action. You have to prepare to make change. You have to prepare. It's like you preparing for anything else. You would never go to war without a gun and making sure you have the right ammo and making sure you have certain things that you're equipped with. You know, if you know you go into the woods, you're going to probably bring a bottle of water and, you know. So why would you not prepare for something like this? This is going to be probably one of the biggest things that any couple would ever have to go through in their relationship if they have to stop a divorce from happening. So you definitely want to make sure you're equipped.
I think you have to have the right mindset. I think sometimes we have a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. A great doctor, Carol Lennick, had this topic about the mindset. Some people feel they can't change, which ultimately leads you to divorce, because when you can't change, or a person says this is just who I am. This is who you married. Well, you're raggedy. Glory to God. You're raggedy. Meaning, we should evolve. We should grow. We should change. Anything alive grows. And so I think that first we must have an open mindset. Number one, am I willing to change? Number two, are they worth me changing for? Because sometimes we feel as if this person is not worth me changing, which is a terrible thing. But if you marry them, there should be some aspect of you that wants to grow. None of us are perfect. I wish we had a husband class. Real talk. I wish there was like, husband class 101, wife class 102, and then we'll send each other to class and we get better. But that's not a reality. I like you, you like me, let's get booed up and have a family. But the reality is we're not ready for work. And if you want your marriage to work, you must be willing to put in the work. So I think it starts with a growth mindset that I'm willing to change. I think number two is you have to own you. A lot of times we want to blame our spouse, our parents, our upbringing for why we are the way we are. If you are rude, own that you are rude. If you are short, own that you are short. And so I know for me, I have a predisposition to be short. I've learned that I want what I want when I want it. I don't know about y'all, but I want what I want when I want it. And sometimes when I don't get what I want when I want it, I don't act well. Well, that's immaturity. So meaning, before you start playing the blame game on why we are where we are, as Michael Jackson, the great prophet, said, I'm looking at the man in the mirror and I'm asking him to make a change. And I don't know who I'm talking to right now, but ultimately, change begins with you. And you are at least 50% responsible for that relationship. Sometimes it's more, but at least you are a contributing factor to the relationship. So I think being an adult and grown and say, okay, where do I fall into this? What have I contributed to make her feel this way? There was a time I asked myself the question. There was a time when my wife was speaking to me kind of harsh, kind of rough. And at first I wanted to respond. When somebody come at you like, rah, 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 with other words. And I wanted to respond, but I didn't respond because at this point I had grown in the Lord. And I asked the question, what have I done to her to make her talk to me like that? Versus just saying, why do you talk to me like that? Why don't I ask myself the question, what have I done to her to make her feel as if that's the only way that I will hear her? And as I processed that, God showed me some things about me. When's the last time you asked yourself the question, is it me? Could it be that I am the impetus, that I am the person that's creating this environment, this toxic environment? And the reality was, I was a main factor in the issues we had.
I think when you look at yourself instead of looking at your spouse and really be honest with yourself, you can identify a lot of things that you can change, even if you feel like those aren't the big issues. It may not be big to you, but it may be big to your spouse, and they may not have felt like you were a safe place to communicate to them, how they were feeling. So I think also clarifying the needs, clarifying what you want to see change in a marriage, in your marriage, is so it's so important, because if you don't clarify what you really want to see change, you're leaving your spouse open to have to guess what you want to change. And the things that they may guess may not be the things that you want changed. I remember us having a conversation years ago about some things that I wanted to change in our relationship. And we had a serious conversation.
Serious.
And I was so, I was offended.
Offended.
When you pulled out your laptop and started typing. And it was actually your iPad. You pulled out your iPad and you started typing. And I was thinking, what is this brother typing? Because I am just pouring my heart and soul right now. And he is sitting up on the iPad just typing away. And he was actually typing the things that I was asking him to change so he wouldn't forget. And later on, maybe 6 weeks later, we did a follow-up, right? And with that follow-up, I said, I haven't seen you do any of the things that I wanted you to change. And he said, oh no. He pulled out his iPad again and he went down the list of things. And he said, babe, I've changed this. I've changed this. I've changed this. And then he proceeded to tell me how he was making those changes. And one of the things that I actually advise couples now is to do what Jomo did, write it down. But instead of coming up with your own ways of how those things should be changed, do it together. Because I wasn't able to identify at the time when he was making those changes what he was changing, because it didn't look like what I thought it would look like. But it looked like just the way he envisioned it to look like. So I had to accept that and apologize for not seeing those changes, because when you identify that your spouse is actually making an effort to change, you should actually acknowledge that and celebrate that, because they're actually prioritizing you, prioritizing your marriage, and prioritizing your union. So that was something that I actually learned that day when you were like, nope, I've done this. It was very good to write down the things that you want and clarify the changes you want to make.
Listen to me. It's hard to fulfill what you don't define. How can you hit a target that you have not marked? So when she was telling me the issues that she felt, and remember, everyone's feeling is real to them. That's right. Whether you agree or not, it's real to them. And we must make what's important to them important to us, irregardless of what we think. So as she was telling me, I didn't want anything to slip my mind. So I wanted to make sure I documented it, because see, if you're not taking notes, it's not important, in my opinion. And I just wanted to make sure that I could fulfill what she told me. So I wanted to define it. She was truthful in regards to saying that how we look and see things, the end result is different, because I'm going to make the change based on how I see it. But the key is make the change, but also check in on how am I doing with the change. We can both work towards something, but if we're not working in agreement and communication with what we're working on, it may not feel like change. Remember this, I've never seen a large ship turn quickly. If you've been in a marriage for a season and you expect radical shifts, it may take longer than you expect. So be thankful for the incremental changes, the acknowledgments on the way to your change. Because the reality is the enemy of our soul wants the divorce. God hates divorce. The devil loves divorce. So we have to understand that we have an adversary that wants us to fail. So we have to be mindful that we have to be intentional to fight for our marriages. And change is critical. So for me, recently, she said, Jomo, we got to do something with this. I said, okay, let's talk about it. How can we change it? How can we work on it? How can we improve it? Because see, I want to have the blessed marriage.
Right. If we're going back to just thinking about the topic of how to stop a divorce, right? You've seen couples on the brink of divorce, and they look like they're on the brink of divorce. You actually want to change that and start looking like you did when you first met that person. When you were dating them, you looked your best, you smelled good, you looked good, you talked nice. You know, you really took care of yourself. So you don't want to look like you're on the brink of divorce when you're trying to fix it and save your marriage. If you're trying to save your marriage, you want to go back to the time when you felt like your marriage was in the best place, when your relationship was in the best place. And when it was in the best place, you probably weren't looking toe up from the flow up, right? You were probably looking your very best. You were doing your hair, you were putting your makeup on, you were getting dressed really nice. You were accenting the curves of your body and maybe not so many curves. I mean, you know, you were actually being intentional about the way you looked. So we want to definitely do that when we're going through, because just because we're going through doesn't mean we have to look like we're going through.
That's good. I think we should want to be the best version of ourselves for our spouses.
Right.
You know, a while back, my wife had told me that, you know, my body had shifted a little bit, just a little shift. Now, if you don't know it, the older you get, things are going south. Okay, just want to say that the older you get, things are going south. Now, the key is, how can I keep it up as long as possible? I probably shouldn't have said that part. But anyway, I'm talking about the muscles, the arms and stuff. I wasn't, whatever, you know, I'm trying, you know what, keep everything up. How about that? Just keep everything up.
Whenever you use that example, it really bugs me because it makes it seem like I was like trying to be malicious when I said that.
It wasn't malicious, sweetie. I got no issue with it. I want to be what you want me to be.
That's good.
So I'm saying, so I'd rather you tell me, Jomo, I liked you when you look like this. Babe, I like when you look like that. Remember, how can I fulfill what I don't define? And the reality is we're visual, okay? So brothers and sisters, y'all look at TV too. Y'all look at Instagram. Right. And if it's a buffed guy or a guy that's physically fit, you looking. If there's a lady with a big booty and hips and all that stuff, you looking. So why wouldn't you, if that is what you're looking at, and you have the potential to have that on you or work yourself in shape, or why wouldn't you do it? My goal is to mitigate, minimize all distractions. So if my wife says she likes this on me, well, I'm going to wear that. And if a husband says, babe, I like when you wear that dress, I would expect you're going to wear that dress. I don't think it's a bad thing to explain or express what you like in or what they wear with your spouse. Mm-hmm. Because I think doing that is ultimately trying to please them. My opinion.
Also, in addition to wanting to look your very best, I think we need to absolutely clear up any past hurts that you may have within your relationship if you're trying to stop a divorce or stop your marriage from going down. You definitely want to clear up any past hurts. So if there's anything that you and your spouse have gone through together that could cause this divorce to be a final thing for your relationship, you definitely want to clear up any of that. Anything that may be lingering that maybe wasn't resolved, or they didn't get any closure in the situation. Now, closure can look different for a lot of people, but we definitely don't want to go so far back into details where it can cause new hurts either. But I definitely think clearing up any past hurts in your marriage can definitely help.
I think much like a wound, you may have to put some alcohol in it to clean it out. So if there is a wound that you feel was not fully cleaned out, it may be better to clarify. I think also if we want to move forward and not get a divorce, we first have to make a decision that we are moving forward and we're not taking the past with us. Because oftentimes people want to move forward, but at the same time, they want to remind you of who you used to be. Now, truthfully, if you keep doing the same thing, they're going to keep reminding you who you used to be. So you have to make sure that changes are being made as we move forward. You know, babe, I hurt you here. I acknowledge that I hurt you. I apologize I hurt you. Now with the hurt, what I want to do is I want you to give me guidelines by which I can restore trust. And you tell me what you need. Because the reality is I can't give her what I think she wants. I have to give her what she needs. And oftentimes we give them what we think versus what they really need. So number one, I have to acknowledge the hurt. Number two, I'm going to ask her, what could I do to help mitigate the hurt? Or what could I do to restore trust so that we can move on? And the other thing I think that we have to be mindful of is some aspects of the reason why people get divorces is they have not developed certain skill sets. People think that just because I like you and you like me, or I love you and you love me, and we're going to have a happy family, that we don't have to develop skill sets. Listen, you have to learn how to listen. You have to learn how to communicate. You have to learn discipline. You have to learn structure, meaning there are certain skill sets that we have to develop. I have to understand that communication is not me talking. Communication hasn't happened until we have a mutual understanding of what I said and you received. And sometimes the challenge is we hold you responsible for hearing right without speaking right. Meaning, how's your tone? How's your attitude? Do you receive me? Do I receive you? Meaning, there are certain skill sets that we have to develop to have a good marriage. For example, babe, when you said this is what I heard. Is this what you meant? Meaning, just after hearing her, I recite back what she said to me, and I get clarity if that's what she meant. Oftentimes, we don't even do that. The Bible says in James chapter 1, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to wrath. We do the total opposite. Quick to speak, slow to listen, and fast to wrath. And for us to develop, we have to develop certain skill sets. There's some things we have to mature on and get over. The Bible says when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I act like a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And if we want our marriage to work and for us to end this divorce, we got to put away some childish things. And so I think the skill set development means you need help. Because if you had the skill set, you'd be using it. So there's something missing that we need. And I know in our marriage, when I saw a couple walking it out, I said, wait a second, it's possible. So then I realized from that point on, we had to have M&Ms, models and mentors. We have to have people that are further along on the journey that we can glean from, that we can learn from. Marriage works when you put in the work. If you don't put the work in, it's not going to work. And so I think a lot of people think that the relationship will just grow without work. I don't see muscles growing unless work is being put in. And our marriage is a muscle that we have to work.
I think as it pertains to skill set, how do we plan to be good at marriage if we don't actually be intentional about learning about marriage. Some of the things that we've done in our marriage in order to get better in different skill sets is going to marriage conferences, surrounding ourselves with other people, as Jomo said, models and mentors. We also have read self-help books.
Absolutely.
We've also talked through some things to figure out what our plan is, how it fits for us, because every couple is different. Every combination of couples is different because every couple has had different experiences and different past hurts and different childhood experiences where we have to come together and figure out what are each other's triggers. So with that being said, having skill sets in your marriage is so important. And it doesn't just have to be a counselor, professional counselor. You can actually seek these things out on your own. And sometimes it's just as easy as sitting down and talking to each other and communicating. And the more you communicate, the better you get at it. Going back to, could you marry the wrong person? Can you marry the wrong person? I mean, a lot of times we think about this when we're married, when we're going through some hard times, or we've had traumas where we've seen divorces happen and we're seeing the same things right before that divorce happened that we saw. We're seeing that in our own personal relationship. Well, I know when we first got married, we were having a tough time as a non-married couple right before we got married. And every time we got into an argument that first year of marriage, I was thinking to myself, did I marry the wrong person? Did I force this man to marry me and I was not supposed to be married to him? I remember after I got saved and I joined a women's Bible study, I asked one of the ladies, do you think it's possible to marry the wrong person? And she said, absolutely, I think it's possible to marry the wrong person. Maybe you didn't seek God before you married them. Maybe you're unequally yoked. Maybe there's abuse or abandonment. It could be a lot of different things as to the reason why you could have married the wrong person. But there was a but. But if you put God in the center of your relationship, anything can work. Anything can work out. So you want to make sure that no matter what you're doing, no matter what trials and tribulations that you may be going through, any challenges you may be going through in your relationship, that if you put God in the center of it, any marriage can work. You had some great points to this.
I think that you can marry the wrong person. I think that if you are unevenly yoked, and I see a lot of couples who one person is saved, the other person's not saved. And then they struggle because, see, they have two visions. If we have two visions, ultimately it leads to division. Division leads to divorce. Now, we're not encouraging people to divorce, but I've learned that if I'm going north and you're going northeast, if we go on this route long enough, there's going to be a huge distance in between us. And this is when people say, we have grown apart. Well, how'd you grow apart? You grew apart because you're going in different directions. Amos 3:3 says, how can two walk together unless they agree? So I think it's critical for us to understand, I do believe you can marry the wrong person. With that caveat, I believe if two people surrender their life to Christ, and say we're going to do it God's way, it can work out. The reality is, for most of this world, they were arranged marriages. I never knew her. She never knew me. Do you know they have a 95% success rate and they never met? Could it be that we are the problem? Could it be that our eyes are the problem? Our wants are the problem? Because ultimately, I think sometimes people go into marriage expecting something. And then when that need is not met, they feel as if they married the wrong person. Could it be that us working together, growing together is how marriage is supposed to be? I learned early in our marriage that when we were going through some struggles, that those struggles grew me into being a better man. And sometimes I believe people run from the struggle that God allowed for us to grow. It's kind of like when we had kids. Having children changes you. Being married changes you. And you become the best version of you if you allow it.
Well, I think this is a great topic.
Amen.
And I want to ask if anybody is feeling like this would help any couple, please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And remember, love,
Laugh,
and learn.
be blessed.